Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Break the Rules. I'm your host, Lev Polyakov, and we are here today for the very first time with independent researcher Ashton Forbes. We also have my main man, Didier, over here in the house, who's going to be helping me a lot with physics, which I am absolutely not an expert on. Once again, everybody, make sure to smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, click the bell. All of that is extremely important for the growth of this channel. And we are going to be talking to the main man himself, Ashton Forbes, who brought up the Malaysia flight MH370's disappearance, having to do with these teleporting orbs. And this has been a very frequent thing that really, I think, got a lot of people thinking about what exactly is out there. Now we have all these disappearances of these scientists. Many things are coming out as far as the UAP files, courtesy of the White House. So we're going to be talking about that as well. And once again, with Didier getting a little bit more into the physics, which I will leave up to you two guys to kind of sort everything out here exactly, whether the ether is real and what exactly is going on here. But very short intro. Let's get a little bit of a sense of how you found yourself here, Ashton, interested in this particular disappearance of this plane, and how you started thinking about all this stuff. So you have the floor. And once again, make sure everybody subscribe. Patreon.com/breaktherules. Become a supporter as well. So Ashton, you have the floor, my friend.
Well, I want to clip farm. So first thing I want to say here is that I think about Jason Giorgiani a lot. I saw him retweet this live stream. And the reason why I think about him a lot is a lot of people say they think we have to find the solution of physics, or they think we have to build a free energy device, and they think that these may be the secrets to the UFO phenomenon. But I would say that's not going after the core problem. The core problem of the UFO phenomenon is not figuring out physics or building some secret device. It's philosophy and psychology. Those are the problems, and that's why I always think about Jason Giorgiani, because he considers himself, the first American philosopher. And he looks at the problems that are associated with all the technology we're going to discuss today. And that's what ultimately needs to get solved. Those are the hard problems. Figuring out what UFOs are and what's going on with all that, that's an easy problem to figure out. Hard problem is, how does our civilization literally exist with like free energy and, super advanced technology?
Absolutely. And Jason, for those who don't know, he is a good friend of the show. And if you guys check out the back catalog of Break the Rules, you're going to see a lot of great Jason Giorgiani episodes there. There's a whole playlist you guys could check out. But I do want to also then get to Didier, since we bring up philosophy. Just real quick, what do you see as far as this combination of mathematics and philosophy in some of the people that you're a big fan of, Didier?
What do you mean by that? Can you be a bit
more? So you were talking about certain mathematicians that are also philosophers at the level that would make somebody like Plato, seem like an amateur. So who exactly are these people that you were talking about there?
Oh, you mean like Kurt Gödel?
Yeah.
Ademar. I mean, of course, I was being a bit hyperbolic by making a statement that Plato would look a bit amateurish in front of those guys. But yeah, I think that physics got a bit dislocated away from philosophy. And I think past philosophers like Dirac, like Heisenberg, and so on and so forth, were a bit closer to philosophy. And I think that lots of people in modern, can I say this? People who expose scientific idea kind of dismiss philosophy for some reason, and I think that was a big negative, and I think that bringing back philosophy into science, I think, is important, and so it is in mathematics.
And so if I could jump in, I would say, you asked me who I am, and I would say I'm actually just a regular guy. I'm a guy that just kind of came off the street. I investigated the MH370 videos, who many people still think are fake. Predominantly, the vast majority think they're fake, and therefore think that I'm some kind of scammer. And the reason why I bring up philosophy is, what is one of the oldest lessons that we have learned in time was what the clergy were certain, that Earth was the center of the universe and that the sun revolved around the Earth. Scientists have gotten it wrong throughout history, consistently wrong. And we've always advanced and moved on. And every time somebody has come in with a new idea, with a new way of looking at things, they've been shunned, they've been ridiculed, they've been told they're pseudoscientists, they've been literally burnt at the stake in some cases. And I'm here to tell you that's what's going on here. Those videos, the reason why I'm talking about physics at all is because those videos show us something. They show us our next evolution of physics, of unification of the forces. They show us our future. They show us our literal future. And that's something that's not a problem of us having to go build something or figure something out. That's us having to try to figure out, how do we deal with this information and what does this mean for us, and to process it. Because as you can see, most people can't even accept it to be true. But what I'll say today, which is important, is that if you guys look around, you can see the flips happening. Neil deGrasse Tyson is talking about aliens. Sabine Hassenfelder is saying that faster than light communication she thinks is possible, even though she's been poo-pooing on it. Eric Weinstein was on Joe Rogan today, and he's doing a 180. And he's saying, after I talked to Eric Davis about wormholes, I had a bunch of government people talking to me and saying that, there's something going on here. It's like, you're seeing it happen, guys. This is the transformation, and it's being pushed from behind the scenes and forward facing. They're sending all their, useful idiots to the front to tell us, oh, but guys, got us get ready for the aliens, because they're trying to open our mind. They're just doing it in kind of a libtarded way, in my opinion.
Well, this was Jason Giorgiani's very important point about how you are going to have a lot of these religious people that are going to be using this UFO thing in order for people to accept. There we go. Yeah, pointing to the crucifixion painting behind you there, Didier. That they're going to be using it to usher in this kind of perennialist philosophy of the kind that people like Rene Guénon were talking about, and the famous theosophist Julia Savola talked about. So I don't know. Do you agree that there is this tendency for certain people, like Giorgiani was talking about, the Collins elite, for example, wanting there to be this one world religion in order to consolidate power?
See, this is why I love him, and why I want to talk to you, and why I like thinking about those kinds of questions. Because you look at those videos, and you're watching these 3 plasma orbs spinning around this plane, and first question you're wondering is, why the hell are they recording this? And the answer to that question is because that's an operation. That's the CIA pulling that off. So now if we just say, okay, wait a minute, you're saying that this is CIA, these orbs are CIA, that's not aliens? Then you start to realize what's really going on here. It's not the space aliens with the secret technology. Although maybe they do. Who knows? But the important part is, it's human beings. It's our own government. It's our intelligence community, the ones that are literally supposed to collect information and keep it secret, that are obviously keeping a lot of information secret, very important information secret, including unification of the forces. The only way I can rationalize that is that there's literally some people pulling the strings behind the scenes that have like a literal plan set out for how everything's going to play out and when the technology will be doled out to the people. And part of that is, yes, at some point we're just going to bring everybody under this one world government. But I imagine that Jason Giorgiani is 100% correct that Hillary Clinton was going to be the one, and they were thinking it was going to be this thing where it's going to be some kumbaya, the aliens are real, okay, no more wars anymore, everybody comes together. But that's not how it's really going to play out. It's not how it's playing out at all. Now Trump, it's 2026, Trump's in charge, and he knows we have the technology, and he's just knocking them down. So to answer your question, or just final point, is my concern is that the only way it's actually we're gonna survive hyper advanced technology, weapons that make nukes look like firecrackers, is if we have a one world government. And then the question is, well, what does that government look like?
Well, theosophically speaking, that is a question of the Nietzschean last man versus the overman, where if we're going to have a bunch of last men that have access to a certain tech that may not require, nuclear enrichment or something that, let's say, complicated in order to create these devices that are capable of mass destruction, that's a lot of responsibility for somebody to have, that for a long time has existed in the state of creature comfort. How are we going to, like, if you were to actually go into the mind of these, world controllers, let's say, would they be necessarily wrong in thinking, why the hell would we trust all of these Tom, Dicks, and Harrys to have access to this kind of technology, where any one of them could just go rogue at any point? Like, that is so much responsibility, isn't it?
That's exactly. You don't even have to imagine. You can actually listen to Jim Simivan, former CIA in the UFO community. He definitely knows. He says exactly that. He said exactly what you just said. He said, all these people come to me and they say, yo, what if they're hiding this breakthrough technology, energy technology? He goes, well, what if they are? And he kind of gives this little smile. You're like, and he's like, because you think about it, look at the asymmetrical warfare that's going on right now. We're just completely annihilating Iran, doing whatever we want. We have, nobody's missiles are, people say we're losing, no missiles are hitting America, guys. So you look at it, you say that's only possible because we've been hiding this technology. That's why our adversaries don't have it. That's why our adversaries can't strike us. And the other side of it, he says, is now imagine some terrorist nation, honestly, just some cult, because it doesn't take uranium enrichment anymore. Now you can make a fusion bomb that makes a black hole that just zaps people away. And it's, doesn't take very much compared to state-sponsored material management to produce. That's a very serious thing. And that's why I say, and I'm not joking, this technology is the end of the world. It's absolutely the end of the world. And that's why I'm even uncomfortable revealing and talking about it, because I think that their play has been kick the can down the road as long as you can. Hide the physics as long as you can, because ultimately it's going to come out, but just, we're safer as long as we hide it. And then when we do finally roll it out, we have mass surveillance, so we can track everybody, Palantir. We have control of AI, which itself may go rogue. And then we also have perception control. That's what you see from the gatekeepers and their useful idiots that are out there telling you about, you have to believe in the aliens now or whatever, right? Is that they're trying to control your perceptions. They're trying to manage it in a way that you can absorb it, as opposed to me saying, hey, we have super advanced technology. We're like using it in black operations on civilian airliners to like get at China or something. Like, it's not something that people can palate.
And as far as the aliens go, and I want to get to the physics real quick, but as far as the aliens go, there does seem to be this particular divide between the aliens that we would assume would be more human-based, as far as, the Nordics, for example, that these three Georges, George Van Tassel, George, who are the other two? I forget. So there's George Van Tassel, then there's George Hunt Williamson, and I'm missing the final George. If anybody in the chat can remind me who the final George is. But anyway, those are the more human Nordic, quote unquote aliens that, as I was speaking with Jason Giorgiani before, these are allegedly the people who are the gods that gave civilization to humanity and ruled over us, and, may intend on ruling over us furthermore down the line. They would be beings that are capable of a lot more than we are. But then there's also the other kind of aliens, which is the Jacques Vallée spectral idea of the alien, where they would be like this trickster entity that interacts with humanity and would manifest wearing a kind of mask that we would recognize, something that would mirror something that's familiar to us. So let's say certain neotenous features, that's pretty similar to a gray alien or a mantis, or let's say a featherless owl, which is also something that's been observed when it comes to these various sightings. These would be like the fairies, the elves, the dwarves, all these various creatures from mythology. It would be, in a way, again, if this exists, if all this fairy lore has any kind of reality to it, then it would be something that would be interacting with us based on our preconceptions of what it's supposed to look like. So I'm curious, Ashton, before we get into the physics, if you have any thoughts on those two differentiating, quote unquote, alien types.
I think all alien types exist. Every single thing you could possibly imagine exists. I think we might even be aliens. I think it's a good possibility we jumped through a wormhole and then we got trapped on this planet, or we just crashed and just decided to give our technology like some weird Amish species or something like that. I think we might be a species with amnesia. It's one of the most plausible things. When it comes to the personalities of the aliens, I think it doesn't really matter. I think that's actually looking at the problem the wrong way, although it could absolutely be true, because I'm saying that all aliens can exist out there. The problem has always been with aliens, how did they get here? Distance, space is too big. It is too big. And I'm here to tell you, it's not a problem anymore. Now we have the ability to quantum jump from one point to another. And even if there's rules associated with that, it still beats the old way of travel. Not even comparable, basically. So what I'm here to tell you is that these aliens, they've got free energy. They've got the ability to manifest elements straight out of the vacuum. They've got the ability to transmute elements. They have Star Trek replicators. They can be invisible anywhere they want to be, anytime they want to be. They've got obviously anti-gravitational technology and what we would think of as straight up teleportation. So you tell me, what should I think about the aliens? Well, shit. Just tell me which aliens I have to pray to, because well, they're going to do whatever the hell they want to us. We're not on the aliens levels at all. Plus, now I'm thinking about, now I know about AI. Now I'm going, why does the aliens have to be biological? Can't the aliens just be like a super computer, super hive mind?
Well, that's kind of the thing that I was getting at when talking about this Jacques Vallée Nordic distinction, because that is more of a Neoplatonic view of reality, where there's a hierarchy of forms, where we're more corporeal, more quote unquote physical, and then there will be other kind of aliens that would be more of a, I don't know, thought form, spectral variety. And I wonder if if that does exist, of course, if there is a gradient in between those two, like something that is more pure thought versus something that is what we would at least consider to be physical, as far as, we zoom in and we see all these cells and, microbes and all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this. I've had a major spiritual undertaking as I've learned about the physics, not the conspiracy, about the physics side of it. I was actually somebody that I grew up and I was somewhat agnostic, and I became atheist, and then I became more theist and spiritual later in life from learning more about quantum mechanics and reality, and learning that the reality is more weird than I would have originally anticipated. So sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought there.
Well, no, now we're getting into the physics, right? So as far as what inspired you to go on your path related to physics, what would be sort of the awakening things that you learned that brought you to that path?
Yeah. So learning that space-time itself is not empty, and that there's like rules to space-time itself, so that there potentially is an extra dimension. To me, I think that this implies that this universe, this construct itself has a creator. So this is the reason why I personally believe that there is a God, an extra, another entity or something that kind of has supreme control and intelligence. And you can almost imagine looking down on our reality as like one of those snow globes, right, from the outside, and we can't perceive it. But it's there. And what this means to me, though, also this extra dimension, when it comes to your question of, I think you were asking about the aliens and the entities and what they might be, like what their form might be. That was what I was trying to get to.
Yes,
was that I think it's very likely that our bodies are just a receiver. That if there really is this extra dimension, this extra 0-point energy that's out there, perhaps consciousness is non-local. What if consciousness is non-local at all, and we're just resonating and tapping into Ashton or something like that? And if that's the case, then you don't even necessarily need biological beings to be alive. So this idea that, for example, plasma could be conscious, yeah, I'm down with it, because plasma can be self-stabilizing, self-organizing. That's one of the big secrets of fusion that we're going to talk about here. And if that's possible, there can be self-organizing plasmas that can float around for 100 years, then why can't that be conscious? Why can't that learn and grow and adapt? I think we're going to find that life is everywhere, and it's going to be a lot more weird than we anticipate, but there will still be possibly humanoid life as well, too.
I certainly hope you're right. Now, as far as Didier, what do you have, if anything, yet to say regarding, let's say, plasma? If we could start with that, what Ashton was talking about. Do you have any follow-up question in relation to plasma?
Not really. I'm not really somebody who deals with, like, how to say this, like plasma is not. I'm more a theoretical guy, mathematical physicist. So plasma is not something that maybe we should, I think, talk about. Something that I think maybe the chat and the audience doesn't really know much about, which would be 0-point energy.
That's a good way to start. Sure. So Ashton, as far as your definition of what 0-point energy is, it'll probably take a long time to cover everything, but as short as you can make it.
So Sabine Hassenfelder recently, we were going back and forth on Twitter, and there are a couple of perspectives of 0-point energy. The conventional perspective, let's call it, is that if we take all the heat and we take all the light out of a cube of empty space, we should take all the energy out of it. There should be nothing left. But we find out there is. Quantum mechanics tells us there's still something left in there. Still, and you can never get to absolute zero. There's always something there. That's the 0-point energy. Now, the problem here is that we try to calculate it. Well, what is that? You say, okay, we're going to calculate all the modes, all the wavelengths in that little region. And we do that. And the problem is we get basically infinite. We get basically, why? Because in quantum mechanics, pendulums never stop. In quantum mechanics, nothing ever stops. So if you were to just theoretically calculate it out, you realize, well, now that means there's infinite energy because movement's energy. So we have theoretically this huge amount of energy there. But then we would say, can we tap it though? Can we tap it? And so from my perspective, let's say the pro 0-point energy perspective, I would say we have a potential well of energy, and it's not shallow just because it's near zero. It's actually huge amount of energy. And we know it's there, absolutely proven to be there, because we can take two random plates that are next to each other, don't do anything to them except for look at them, and they come together all on their own. And the only way that's possible is that there's something's changing the boundary conditions of what we would call space-time. It's pushing out, so only certain modes can fit inside, and the outside ones are pushing in to push it together. So we know the 0-point energy is there. And this is a misconception. People say you can't tap it, though. This would be the big argument against it. But you can. The fact that those plates are coming together, that's work. That's movement. We could theoretically use that movement of those plates coming together to charge a battery. It would be very little, but we could do it. So that does prove that theoretically, or not even theoretically, experimentally, we can tap 0-point energy. Now, the problem is, now I want to make an engine that perpetually extracts that energy. I want to pull that ocean of energy out. That's the goal, right? The problem is we can't do that with two plates. Plates come together. Well, now I got to rip them back apart again. And then they do it again. So Robert Forward, famous physicist, 1984, he speculated he was going to make like a coil that like winds up like this. And he was going to charge it. And so when it would charge, it would kind of compress a little bit and then release the charge. And then it would try to extract the work that way. Problem there is people are saying, well, what's the input versus the output? And they would just say, well, you're going to get the same input as you're going to get output. And this is ultimately what Sabine Hassenfelder's final argument is. I don't think she presented it in the right way, because she says, well, you have to count how much energy you take when you set the plates up. That's not the problem. I mean, well, how much energy does it take to set up the plates? I don't know. How much energy does it take to build an engine? It depends, right? Like, depending on the plates over here, are they there? The issue is pulling them apart. That's the issue of repeatable work. But here's the thing. That's not necessarily going to be a problem. Heat pumps are a good example of how this is not a problem. It's a conceptual problem. Again, these are not physics problems or engineering problems. It's philosophy and it is psychology. In this case, we can get around that problem the same way a heat pump gets around that problem. A heat pump can achieve over unity. So if it's very cold over here and I want to make it very hot, I'm going to pump this heat over here. And the reason why it's easy to do is because heat wants to go to cold, right? Heat wants to go to cold anywhere. So if I were to calculate the difference in this cold region over here from this hot region and change the temperature by pushing that heat over there, I can calculate how much energy I just moved, how much energy I just gained to change the temperature. Heat pumps use less energy, electrical energy input to move the heat than the total amount of heat energy gained. That's over unity. That means you just gain more energy than you put in. And you would say, well, Ashton, well, they're just using the fact that hot wants to flow to cold. And I would say, this is the same basis for what we have to do with 0-point energy. We have to set up a system by which we can yank that energy out quickly before it has the ability to restabilize. So if we were just to simply imagine that this 0-point energy is a very hard steel beam, you would say, oh boy, we're going to knock on that. We're not going to be able to do anything to it, right? It's going to be like nothing we can do. This is why we can't, it's hard to interact with, because it requires very specific conditions. And you might even say, Ashton, even if you hammer on that as hard as you can, you're not going to even make a slight dent in that 0 point energy. That's how tight it's wrapped. And I'd say, are you sure? What if I try a different approach? What if I methodically what if I try resonance as an approach to interact with it? So just throwing that idea out there. That's my view of 0 point energy.
So, Didier, now you've got the floor. Somebody referred to you as the Christ poster over there, because you have a literal Christ poster in the background. But I don't think you yourself
it's
are.
Actually a little painting.
Very nice, very cool. Yeah. Although you're not Christian, from what I understand. No, but it's a very nice painting. But anyway, yeah. So you've got the floor. Let me know what you think.
Yeah. So, well, for me, it's more about like just asking the question, because another question I think is important for Ashton to talk about now is you talk about two plates getting close to each other. Now we're talking about a famous force is called the Casimir force, which you get from quantum field theory. Could you explain to the people out there what's the Casimir effect? Because I don't really think people know. Like when you talked about the two plates, I don't think people, really got that. So
yeah, the common interpretation is that when the plates are together, any two plates, you can imagine invisible waves of every size, small ones, bigger ones, right? And if you imagine every possible size of wave, well, however small I get this, then only certain wavelengths can actually fit between them, right? So if the wave's bigger than the plates, then they can't fit inside there. So that idea is there's more wavelengths on the outside than on the inside. This therefore creates a pressure force. And when they calculate the energy here, it's considered to be a negative energy. It's not that the energy that comes out is negative. It's not a magical negative. It's not Harry Potter energy. It's normal energy. It's that it's a negative energy because it's a negative pressure. Because you're basically relieving some of that 0 point energy pressure that's already there. If you imagine the 0 point energy is a giant balloon, we're relieving a little bit of the energy that's already in that balloon. That's essentially what we're doing. This is the misconception that Sabine Hossenfelder and classical physicists, this is why they think it's impossible to extract perpetual energy from 0 point energy. Maybe with the Casimir effect, it's impossible, but it's not overall theoretically impossible. No. It is theoretically possible, and I'm here to say that, not necessarily argue, but to say that plasma can pull it off. High beta plasma specifically, because something interesting happens with high beta plasmas I don't think the world knows about. The ratio between the plasma pressure and the magnetic pressure that the plasma itself produces, the plasma pushes out the magnetic fields when it gets dense enough. When you compact that plasma enough, it pushes out the magnetic fields. And when that ratio gets near 1, where there's this perfect balance, this also pushes out the 0 point energy, just like the Casimir effect. And so now what do we have? Now we have a bubble of plasma whose walls act just like the Casimir effect walls do. And we can modulate it. We can maybe spin it around. We can move it around in free space if we want. We just created an electric engine using the vacuum. That's my main argument for how, just to give an example for how we could get around using the plates, but still perform the same thing.
Okay. I just want to understand. So where is the ground state in this model? Is there a ground state?
The ground state is the normal ground state. So they would say there's a true vacuum and a false vacuum. Okay. You would say that the false vacuum is what we would call the vacuum, space-time. The true vacuum, the false vacuum would be where the top of the 0 point energy, the ocean, the sea of the ocean, right? The true vacuum, if you were somehow to pull this out, push this away, now you're pushing down to the true vacuum. So if you were to think about it like, let's say, EM drive and warp drive and wormholes, for example. I would say an EM drive, you're like slightly pulling a little bit of energy out. And if you do this, you would expect there to be a pushback, a negative pressure, just like the Casimir effect pulls you forward. If you pull more and more energy out, this would be equivalent to like a warp drive. Now I'm pushing towards the speed of light relativistically, like if I'm looking at the object, but I would just be getting sucked away basically. And then if you pull the most energy out, if you break through the glass, so to speak, now you've just created a wormhole. Now you've dropped all the way down to the true vacuum. And this is where I would argue why you need an extra dimension to explain this, why you cannot explain this with just 4 dimensions, because now you've just simply vanished. And now I'm arguing that essentially all points in space and time are connected. And now in theory, how do you determine where you even show up? It's going to depend, in my perspective, my viewpoint, you have to have some kind of direct connection. Quantum entanglement basically needs to exist. And that's how you would determine where you show up.
Okay. And just to lift that up. So you just tell me, in your model, you say you have an extra dimension. What that dimension is modeling exactly? Four-dimensional manifold. You get 3 dimension of spaces. You get 1 of time. What's your extra dimension?
The 5th dimension would be mass energy density. So these are not my theories, actually. This is what makes what I do so funny, is that I basically speak for dead people. Okay. I'm like Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. Ferris Williams has this 5D theory. He was a Los Alamos, right? Yeah, Los Alamos nuclear engineer, Navy scientist, corrected the thermonuclear weapons calculations. This is the part I can't get over. He corrected the thermonuclear weapons calculations. They were off by 50%. 50%. And you say, how the hell would somebody do that? And so the first thing you look into him is you find out, oh, he has this whole different view of physics where there's an extra dimension. And it enables easy nuclear fusion, enables warp drives. And I'm just going, wait, are people looking at this? Like, this guy corrected the thermonuclear weapons, right? Like, we know that. And yeah, so his model is that there's an extra dimension, it's mass energy density. And under this model, you can actually use the angular momentum of the Earth and you can calculate the magnetic moment. Because he's basically saying that a spinning mass will produce charge. And that you can basically figure out why things have charge has to do with their spin. So yeah, there you go. That's the answer to your question.
Okay. So, but what happens to spinless particles, for example, your photons, your Higgs, your, for example, there are some hadrons that have no spin. I think one of the pion has no spin, if I'm correct. So what about that?
Truthfully, I don't even go that deep into it. Like, and I'll be honest with you, if people ask me, I don't think I've ever gone that deep into quarks or, subatomic particles. For that part, my perspective doesn't require any of that stuff. And you can have many different views and perceptions of those things, and they can still fit within the model of it, of 0-point energy, because 0-point energy is pretty much just an extension of general relativity. What 0-point energy helps us to understand are the biggest questions in general relativity we don't have right now, which is, what is dark matter and dark energy? We don't need those because the extra dimension is that extra energy that keeps everything sticky. It is that extra dimension that pushes things apart. That's what we have for that. It also explains mass, inertia, gravity, all those things that if you ask, mass as well, because the 0-point energy is what gives us mass. If you were to displace that 0-point energy, you will then become, from our perspective, looking at you, massless. Okay. So this would be the reason then why like spinning, rotating superconductors would have anti-gravitational type effect that we would see. It would just be essentially a negating of the local space-time metric of the 0-point energy in that region, or reducing it slightly. So, and it also explains inertia. Inertia is the resistance to acceleration. How come when I go into free space, how come there's resistance to acceleration? Well, the 0-point energy is the answer. If you remove that, now the resistance to acceleration goes away as well. So this is why the 0-point energy model, which adds just simply one extra dimension, not 14 or whatever the hell Eric Weinstein was saying today. I mean, it seems absurd to me. Just one more dimension. And now what that allows is for like what you saw in the MH370 videos, which seems impossible. I mean, I still look at it and I can't even fathom it. Just bloop, gone. But that plane's not going to some other bizarro dimension crap. It's not going to a different timeline. It's like basically being pulled backwards. Remember I said the extra dimension is mass energy density. And the way that we connect electromagnetism to gravity is torque, spin. So when you're seeing these orbs spinning around the plane, like you can actually use the right-hand rule in electrical engineering, and you can calculate that they're like actually pointing the plane backwards. It's just happening through, I guess I would call it hyperspace. So, you know, people try to tell me, well, we're not going to, if someone tries to argue later, we don't need an extra dimension. I'm like, I'm watching a plane get zapped through hyperspace. So that's an extra dimension to me. I'm just a lame. I'm a layman here.
Wait, so where does the plane end up at the end of the day, if that's even knowable?
I can't know exactly where, but I can tell you the vector, which is honestly crazy enough. Why? Because I've got orbs that are spinning exactly vertical around this plane. They're spinning, let me make sure I'm doing this right. Yeah. Counterclockwise, if we're looking at it from behind, which has a right-hand rule of vectoring it backwards through hyperspace. And the plane, there's coordinates because these Gorgon stare wide area motion imagery, they've got the satellite that it's relaying to. They've got the coordinates there. It's Nicobar Islands. I could actually map it out and figure out that it's flying east in the video. So I know they teleported the plane west. The problem is like, okay, like we're talking hyperspace. It could be going to west to Mars for all I know, right? So I'm thinking the reality is that even in hyperspace, it still obeys gravity, if that makes sense. Like it's not gonna like teleport through the earth. It's gonna like still follow the gradients of the gravitational curve of the planet. And then the question is, okay, well, if it's like some kind of weird straight line teleportation thing, then where does it stop? And I think the answer is that's basically a beacon. Like there's a fourth orb. It could be an orb or alternately charged, probably exactly alternately charged, the three orbs. So then when it pops through hyperspace, it connects. The other alternative or way to think about it is like phase matching. Like there's some kind of wavelength that perfectly aligns. And when it perfectly aligns, that's how it knows to stop at that exact spot. Truthfully, that's the best I can get, which I think is pretty good considering I've got just 2 videos of some plane getting zapped out of the sky, and I'm able to reverse engineer all that.
Yeah, you said a few things very interesting for me because I used to do low dimensional topology, and for me, because the Casimir effect is a demonstration of boundary conditions, and it's if we can extract that energy as you're telling me, and the thing is that the Casimir effect, there's a lot of research that would be classified. There's a lot of there's a great will check, for example, paper that you guys can read on ArcSiv called Chiral Casimir forces, repulsive, enhanced, tunable. It's a great little read. And so there's a lot of really interesting things here, but the only thing that I'm struggling right now it's because the idea of 0 point energy seems, just from a first, because I'm not really thinking about 0 point energy my day to day, to be very honest. And so from hearing this, I'm just thinking, is the where the so that you kind of, in terms of if you're trying to extract net usable work, you would have to lower the system below a ground state, which would violate thermodynamics. So the Casimir effect demonstrates a force from those boundary conditions, not necessarily an energy source that you can harvest. So that's where I'm kind of dislocated from the idea, from the core idea. Also, just to add, the mass stuff is really interesting because the thing is, when you have mass, there's an interaction with the Z and W particles and the Higgs mechanism. So I know you don't really do like particle physics much, but like is there a model that could explain that it could tell me about, like, that could like recover all that stuff? Do you have like a place?
Maybe
Because
not that stuff. I mean, Salvatore Pais did say that he imagined if we could manipulate the Higgs field. You know, I think he's saying that for like the more normie perspective, you know, because from your perspective, the Higgs field kind of is the ether, but it can't really explain exactly how we get all the mass and everything else.
I mean, to be fair, Einstein said that what remained of the ether was found in the manifold. So, and basically Eric Weinstein, to go on this, basically in a way, I mean, it's not the same thing as what you're doing, but is 14 dimensional. But I think it's on a modularity. There's a modularity if it's a certain even number. I don't recall, but it's from the geometry of a bundle. Anyways, so what I'm trying to say is that I lost my thought, but I lost.
I got you. I'll get you back on track. I took a couple notes. So first, though, Einstein is the one who predicted gravitational waves, and the first question people should wonder is a wave in what? What is the perturbation in what? Right. So if you think space is an empty vacuum, then how do you have a gravitational wave? This is the first problem I think people have from the classical view of physics, but 0-point energy solves that. The perturbations in the 0-point energy, right? If you have the gravity changing, then that's the perturbation in the 0-point energy. Just like if the 0-point energy is the ocean and the ocean's calm, okay, well, if you rock it up, you're gonna have a wave.
Isn't your medium just your forces?
The medium is no. In this case, the 0-point energy has real electromagnetic effects, even though there's no mass, even though there's nothing really there. If you're saying that, like, does it explain the fundamental forces? Then yeah, that's what my next point I'm about to get to, which is that Hal Puthoff's 1987 paper, Ground State of the Hydrogen Atom. He's CIA physicist. You've seen him on Joe Rogan, everywhere else. He was just on with this Diary of the CEO, talking about 4 alien types. And I'm just sitting here going, this guy wrote Ground State of the Hydrogen Atom. And I have to go on podcasts and argue his physics because he's talking about aliens. Okay, well, he's basically saying ground state of the hydrogen atom. Here, you tell me. If the hydrogen atom is a nucleus with an electron spinning or moving at all in any way, shape, or form around it, and it's doing that extremely fast, where's the energy come from for that? You believe in entropy, right? Like, if entropy exists, something that's moving must lose energy. So that electron should crash in. If your view is that it's spinning around, I know that's not exactly it, then this electron should crash into the nucleus at some point. It should lose energy, even if it's a small amount. So how do you resolve that? I'm asking first, and then I'll give my answer.
No, tell me. Tell me.
Oh, you're going to make me go first. Okay, I'll go first. So the answer in his paper, Hal Puthoff's paper, is that that atom is sitting in a sea of 0-point energy. Every single atom is. And when you lose a little bit of energy, you gain a little bit of energy. So the question you were asking before is, well, you can't dip down below the ground state. I say, yes, you can, because you're dipping into 0-point energy. It's just so small that we're not seeing it. Is that they were seeing this tiny little bit of energy being radiated out. And then the view then of the universe in general is now where the thermodynamic cycle includes this 0-point energy. Maybe all energy flows back and comes from that 0-point energy. In fact, maybe that's where all the energy from the Big Bang came from, which I don't necessarily even believe in that much. But then to your question of manipulating atoms in general, I would also pose a question. So, 2 questions. First is, the classical view or your view of how the atom is stable. And then the second one is, would you agree that if we could manipulate gravity, we could manipulate the Coulomb barrier? The Coulomb barrier is the repulsive force between 2 atoms. The reason why my hand doesn't go right through the microphone. So if we can manipulate that force with gravity, well, what are we trying to do with fusion? Oh, yeah, we're trying to get 2 ions to come together with fusion. If you can manipulate that force, then fusion would become trivial, just from the particle perspective.
So the second question you said, what about if we could manipulate
gravity?
Gravity.
Reduce the Coulomb barrier.
to use the Coulomb barrier, but in your view, because so to be honest, I don't really interact with a lot of certain topics on Twitter, to be really honest. Anything that's to do with politics, so on and so forth, or like social media.
I lean into it, man. You gotta just lean
That's
into
fine.
it.
That's okay. That's all good. It's just me.
I'm just joking with you. Go ahead.
So, I don't actually know like fully how you see like space time, so on and so forth. It's kind of hard for me to gauge the theory just like that. But my question is like, so how do you see, talking about, speaking of gravity, how do you see gravity? Is it something that you can quantize? I've heard, I just read that you don't think that gravity is an actual force. I don't know if that you think that.
Oh, it's definitely not. Gravity is not a fundamental force, no question. You're not going to go find any secret graviton. It's an induced effect. Okay. So 0 point energy, right? That ocean is telling us how much gravity we're going to feel, right? That's what's telling us. If and it's being displaced by the mass. So it's actually a lot of the reason why 0 point energy feels very similar to classic physics is because it takes the same exact experimental results, observational results, and interprets them in a slightly different way. So I can look at, let's say, like a black hole, for example, and I can say that doesn't necessarily have to be this huge, dense ball of mass. That can actually be like a refractive index change with a bubble kind of surrounding it. So I can look at similar phenomena and look at them in completely different ways. I can look at, for example, the redshift of all the stars moving away from us, and I can say, well, in a refractive index situation, this might be like even a tired light scenario. This could be a situation in which everything isn't actually moving away from us, but we just don't realize we're in an energetic medium all the time. And then from the perspective of the atoms, the way I visualize it, at least, is this 0 point energy I just said is mass, inertia, and gravity. Mm-hmm. So if I am dipping into this in any way, this is setting that gravity. This is setting what those forces are going to be. So if I can create a localized null zone, however I have to do that, we can talk about that as well, how to produce a zone like this. If I can create a localized null zone, now those forces that we're repelling are getting weaker and weaker and weaker in that null zone. And so now I've got a situation where I'm going to have a whole bunch of cluster of electrons or ions that from a classic view, if I were to look at that, I can't explain why it's doing that. But I can explain why it's doing it because I'm manipulating gravity. I'm creating this localized well where those forces are becoming suddenly a little bit weaker. And that's actually what Ken Shoulders showed in the 80s. It was actually in 1989, the same year as cold fusion. He showed EVOs. He called them this weird thing because people were discovering stuff that they couldn't even explain. But this guy was the father of microelectronics. He was one of the first people to build drones. The guy was a genius. And he just found that, I'm getting these clusters of electrons that should be repelling each other. Why am I getting these? And that's the answer, is that you're creating a little bit of a divot, and even a slight one, and now you're controlling the forces, the fundamental forces. And so this is why you're going to see people like Salvatore Pais and many others, many others saying, I've got the unification theory. I have, the God particle. I can control the forces, because it probably is. That probably is the answer. And I'm going to let them fight over the credit. I'm not here to be like, this is the Ashton theory. I'm going to give me that credit. No, I'm telling you, these are all people that are already dead, and they've been probably hiding this for like a long, long time.
Lev, do you have any question?
I am just sitting here, shutting up and wanting you guys to just go at it right now. Because as far as physics goes, I am completely dumb.
Well, let's talk about, let's check in a different direction for a second. Like, what do you guys think the impact would be? Right? Like, so Dirac is relatively new to like 0 point energy, etc. Right? So this is like, he even said, like, this is hard for me to even conceptualize because, I'm not familiar with this. And I think this is a big part of the problem. Like, a lot of people are not familiar with this. Can you imagine a sea of PhDs that now you're like, we kind of got like a part of this physics thing wrong. Turns out there's like a whole extra dimension. This is worse than Pluto's not a planet anymore. This is like way worse than that, guys. Like there's going to be people pretty upset if this is ultimately proven to be true, right? So what do you guys think that impact is of something that's shattering, and how would you even get acceptance for it? And the reason why I say that's the context of this is all these people doing 180s, specifically Eric Weinstein, because the thing that triggered me today about it when I was watching the clips.
That's my guy, though.
Is he your guy? Okay, well, here's the thing. Then you should chat with him, because he did this debate with Eric Davis. And Eric Davis, has been saying this is the world's #1 expert on wormholes. I've got his textbook over here on it. And they're supposed to do a debate about, is this real or not? And Eric Davis is like throwing the whole thing. Like, he's not even like, he's like, I don't know if wormholes are real. You're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, are you going to try to argue it? Like, and then after that debate, Eric Weinstein said on Joe Rogan today, he had government people come reach out to him. You know what? They're not doing that because he was right and the wormholes are fake. They're doing that because he's like, this is real, dude, and you need to get on board because it's coming out one way or another, and you want to be on the right side of history on this. So that's the context of this, because I want you guys to understand, if this was real, and I think it is, this is exactly what they would do. They're going to start pushing these people out there, and then they're going to start telling them behind the scenes, because Eric Weinstein had no idea. And they'd be like, dude, you need to take this a little bit more seriously.
I don't know. My prediction is that the way that things are going, when things are going to be revealed that have been kept secret for a long time, I think we're just going to have a lot of people that are going to be strapped into their virtual reality goon caves if this is not something that's being beamed right into their consciousness at that point. Like, my theory is that if you're going to have something that's this world shattering, then you're going to have to keep a lot of people occupied on like a next level bread and circus thing. So I don't know. I mean, it just seems like that's the way that things may be going as far as people's levels of distraction, starting with, the radio, then the television, then the computer, then the smartphone. And as far as what's next down the line, it's kind of elegant in a way. If we assume for a second that all these things do exist and they're going to be eventually revealed to us, then at that point, I think people are going to be very much occupied by those kind of distractions to even care. I don't know.
What do you think, Dirac?
Yeah, that's a conversation that's I don't know what to think about that on the spot, to be honest. I'll let you guys
What about this then? What if I said, well, that's the CIA that has that technology? Like, that's not aliens. Sorry. Like, it's not the ETs. It's the CIA has it. Like, would you feel safe? Would you feel safe, like, researching fusion technology if the CIA's got shit like that?
Well, there is something.
To be very honest, I'm not gonna talk too much, but to me, it's something I would think happens. I worked in some domains in computational number theory, so that's I wouldn't be surprised. That wouldn't surprise me whatsoever.
Well, Didier, you were also talking before about how if people put up on the internet certain things in relation to how do you build, insert whatever controversial thing it is, then you do get a visit from certain men in suits, do you not?
Yeah, you get calls. You get calls. People start to be interested. There are some places like Technion, like University of Austin, so on and so forth. The Lifshitz Prize. There's many things. You look certain mathematical prices. You look for who they worked. It's kind of how come there's so many mathematicians that are given prizes for the IDF? It's kind of
Let me put it like this. I don't feel safe, and I'm American. I don't feel safe to the level I'm not even gonna ever leave the country ever again, because the fucking CIA has orb technology, and that plane that they zapped out of the sky had an American citizen on it. They don't give a shit if you're an American citizen. And maybe they have some pretext of rules on who they can use it on or not use it on. But these people are fucking psychopaths. They have teleportation and free energy, and they're hiding physics from us. And it's worse than that, because there's no way you could hide all that unless you have like a literal brainwashing campaign going on to convince people you can't extract 0 point. Don't talk about 0 point. Free energy is not real. And they literally made Tesla to be like some kind of mythical figure. It doesn't even get talked about like in the vein of Einstein. And I think that they literally pulled that off. And then I'm thinking, okay, for me, I pretty much just want to be plugged back in. I'm like Cypher in the Matrix now. I'll just take the stake. You know, ignorance is bliss, dude. I think most people would rather just not know. Just rather not know that. Because you want to go to Bali and you don't want to be afraid that, you know, you're going to get poisoned because the CIA set up some 3-month-long elaborate trap because they just didn't like that you posted some engineering schematic, you know, or something like that, right? Like, that's crazy shit. Like, they're targeting engineers.
Well, this is the next thing I wanted to ask. As far as the disappearances, the recent disappearances of these various scientists, some people have said like, oh, it's a coincidence, you know, like this occupation has nothing to do with that occupation. What do you see? Do you see this as being something significant, like with the disappearance of that general recently and all that?
Dude, the general upgraded the nuclear weapons in the United States. I'm still just losing it over this. I might even crash out right now over it. It's definitely a coincidence that these people, like, you know, disappeared over a 2, 3, 4 year period. Then yeah, that's mostly a coincidence, but there could still be a loose tether that connects them for sure. I don't think it's an elaborate plot. They were like, okay, this person, you know, next. But the general is the one that that's unexplainable.
Can you talk a little bit more about what exactly this general was working on, what his rank was, and all that?
So, Major General, right? Major General William Neal McCaslin was the commander at the Air Force Research Labs in 2013. So, proximity to when the plane disappeared, 2014. Basically, all the papers that outline this 0 point energy and what you can do with it are run through the Air Force Research Labs. The way it seems to go down is that they work with people they hire from the civilian perspective, or sometimes people that are their own, and they write these papers for concepts that they're interested in. And this is why they stay theoretical. And then that information then kind of indirectly gets to the defense contractors. And you say, well, how? Well, because those engineers that wrote the papers are the same dudes that are working for the defense contractors. Like, it's just a big incestuous relationship. And then the defense contractors, now it's proprietary information. Now they engineer it. Now they build something out of it. And now the CIA says, okay, Lockheed Martin, we need you to make some magic plasma orbs that can do fusion, and then they're going to spin around, and they're going to zap this plane out of the sky. And you know what? We already did this a few other times before. So, you know, make this one, you know, at here, XYZ. And then it becomes an unacknowledged special access program. This is why Skunk Works doesn't know about it. Like, if you're just on the, you know, on the assembly line or whatever, this is like some off the book stuff that they're going to do to build this stuff for them. So that's how they are getting this science and technology pushed out there. And the Air Force Research Lab guy, he has to know about this. And this is why, you know, he's the guy that trusts in upgraded nuclear weapons. So he disappears. And the circumstances of disappearance are as shady as it can possibly be. It literally doesn't get shadier than this. He clearly ran. Excuse me, one sec. 10 a.m. He's with his wife. The repairman was there. His wife goes to the doctor. She gets back not even an hour later, and he's gone. And he had changed his clothes, meaning they must have seen his clothes he was wearing must have been out on the ground or something. Changed his clothes, left his phone there, and took a gun. I'm just going, what? I mean, no forced entry. Didn't fight back, just vanished. They're trying to be like, oh, he went on a hike, or they're trying to be like, oh, he wanted to kill himself, but he wanted to go do it like somewhere in a remote place where no one would find his body. Dude, no way, none of that is how you do about any of that shit.
Wait, so why would he take the gun, you think?
Because he knows he's going somewhere safe. But, you know, it's an insurance policy. Like, you might trust the people. Like, this is like, you ever watch Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad or whatever?
Sure.
Breaking Bad, like, Saul Goodman disappears, right? When he gets, they all basically, they go to their last thing where they got the van, and they're like,
yeah,
$1,000. And you get in the van, and then they take you to the safe house, and you're going to have a new identity. It's like that. That's my most likely scenario of what's going on that situation. And that's why you take your gun. That's why you change your clothes. That's why you leave your phone behind. You don't want to be tracked. I don't think that's even a foreign adversary, because I think I was talking to Paramount Tactical, who I like, Gary Melton, and he was like, well, foreign adversaries could take them, which is possible, but in the United States, our major general, it seems I don't see the Chinese or Russian at people trying to do something like that. That'd be an act of war kind of thing.
So if he's going away from something, what is that thing that he's trying to escape from, you think?
Great question. And this is what I think is going on. I think it goes back to the Hillary Clinton disclosure. If you look at these disclosure people, just earlier today, I was looking at that debunker guy, Mick West, because I saw him going back and forth with Jeremy Corbell and them. And I'm realizing these are all left-wing Hillary Clinton supporters. All of them are. The debunkers, the alien lovers, all of the sides of them are.
Yeah. By the way, it's still weird, though, that left-wingers are associated with Hill Dog, because when you really think about what Hill Dog represents, it's more of like the Uncle Scar to the hyenas, if that makes sense. Like a lot of that Democratic establishment, it was people who used elements of the far left, but really in terms of a lot of their, let's say, politics, at least in the mid-90s, Bill Clinton era, I wouldn't say it was as extreme as, let's say, Zoran Madnani and AOC and any of the people that are coming out right now. Maybe you could say that it was intended to go that way, where they would present like a certain face of, acceptability for normie people, and then eventually they would start to usher in more of this controlling, China-style mechanism. Maybe you could say that, but I don't know. I just, in my mind at least, since I'm a 90s kid, it's weird for me to associate Hillary with like the far left. She would be seen as, at least from a lot of the Antifa types, as the enemy.
And it's changed. Like, that's why politics, it's like, they're kind of right. It isn't really like left and right, that's why it's like, I just support Trump, man. Like, Trump could be whatever party he's going to be, and that's who I support. That's my guy.
A funny thing, by the way, the people who are anti-Trump right now, they're using that exact same line, there's no left and right, in order to get a lot of the communists and the people who are angry at the Epstein class, as they call it, to go against Trump. Where it's interesting the way that these particular things work. And by the way, just as a side, I really appreciate you writing the things that you're writing about in regards to Minnesota and the fraud that's been going on there, and that recent report about. Can you just say, like, I know it's kind of diverting away from what we were talking about, but could you just say a little bit about what's been going on with the homeless aid situation there in Minnesota and the money that was redirected?
The fraud and Nick Shirley stuff, and it does kind of connect. And I think this is why the topic's somewhat political, and why I personally blame the people I blame, and why I brought up the Hillary Clinton thing, is that I personally find the people that are out there virtue signaling about having to help people, these are the people that have the most skeletons in their closet. And what Nick Shirley showed was that basically they're doing like autistic children, like daycare, fake daycares, fake autistic children's like doctor clinics and things like that, fake home care stuff. And they just set up a pretense of a company, and they've been taking taxpayer money, millions, if not billions of dollars have been getting taken fraudulently. And if you don't think the politicians are at least tangentially aware of this, then you have to be delusional. Especially the fact that the one politician was assassinated in her home right after she voted against more of this fraudulent funding. She was assassinated in her home, and the guy that did it literally said that Tim Waltz basically that was his hitman or whatever. And I'm going, the guy that did it said this, and I don't want to be the conspiracy theorist guy here, but there's a lot of fraud happening. And the big one was the Feeding Our Futures. And during COVID, Ilhan Omar is the one that pushed this bill to allow all this funding so that we could feed kids that were not going to school, because in America, a lot of impoverished children get fed at school. They get their meals at school because they don't get fed at home. And so now they weren't at school. They weren't getting fed. So we paid all these companies to feed all these kids. They were saying there's thousands of kids per day. You know how many kids they fed? None. Not one. Not one. They took millions, and one person was white and the other 70 are Somali. And Ilhan Omar is the one that pushed the bill. And Ilhan Omar took money from them, is friends with the people that did it, literally did promos in their restaurants with them. And I'm just sitting going, how is there no justice? And you want to talk to me about the Epstein class? This is the problem. These people virtue signal about their good, and they're literally fucking criminals. And you go about Hillary Clinton. This is exactly the Hillary Clinton meme. Hillary, kill dog. Because they present themselves as Democrats, as liberals, as open-minded people, but they're fucking teleporting airplanes. Obama is teleporting airplanes. His people that he's trying to be, the liberal progressive people, are the ones targeting civilian airliners, hiding free energy technology, not telling the truth about wherever that came from. I don't know where that technology comes from. Aliens, alternate dimensions, ancient history. Maybe we just figured it out and lied and we're just that evil. But they're not telling the truth. So this is the problem. All the worst things that happen, the worst atrocities, have the best intentions, right? And this is the same with the scam and the fraud. We want to help out the Somalis. We want to bring them in. Well, we want to give them stuff. Well, now they're all defrauding us, right? And now nobody wants to face the music, because if we admit it, now we lose political points.
And now we're seen as racists for going against the Somalis. That's the other thing. Like, if it was like Amish people, it wouldn't really be the same deal here. Like, that is a very important element. In fact, it's gotten so bad that friends of mine who I know who are, pretty well off, they live in New York City, they're not willing. Like, we were literally stepping over this homeless guy who was laying in the middle of the street, and then he's like started moving around. And at that point, I would have been very surprised if there wouldn't be like a moment of rethinking their view, but probably no, because they assume that everything's fine in the city, everything's safe, you can go on the subway, you're not going to get harassed, you're not going to get thrown, into an incoming train. And they're living in this fantasy, because if for a second they were to assume the opposite, then their entire worldview would crumble to bits.
Like, my dad and my parents are hyper liberals, like omega hyper liberals. And I've admitted, I said I was actually a Hillary Clinton guy way back in the day before I woke up right after 2016. But here's the thing. Yes, they can't even address it. I sent my dad the stats while I'm watching the FBI literally listed off, saying that 50% of the physicians are doing fraudulent prescriptions and drugs and different things to people, like prescribing them as autistic and shit like that. I'm going, how is this? Like, you're just literally ignoring this. Can't even accept it to be real, because if it is, then your whole worldview completely collapses. And this is why they attacked Nick Shirley when he was exposing it. They're like, oh, he's not really a journalist and whatever, because he's just literally doing the groundwork. It just took one boomer watching these people and just tracking them, realizing there's no kids going in these places, and the government's doing literally nothing. Literally nothing to catch it. Now, let me add one other story here. I'm going to dox myself a little bit, not much. I live in an apartment complex where, because of all this fraud, there's this like fund that they had put in place to help people that are, basically people that are homeless, trying to get on their feet, trying to stay in somewhere and not become homeless. And once you become homeless, I don't know the stats, but I'm pretty sure you basically don't ever become unhomeless for the most part. So anyway, it's just fun for it. And now they have to cancel it, because basically they had ballooned this fund and we're just defrauding it entirely. And I live in an apartment complex where I can guarantee you people that were like those type of people that were using it, that needed that money to be able to live in this apartment for a couple months or whatever they needed, right? This exact apartment that I'm in right now, that may not be available to them. Maybe they got booted out of here. I mean, I've seen people have to go, and I've kind of wondered why they have to go suddenly and things like that. And so you realize it's real people that are being hurt by this. And we need some sort of change for it to happen. Yeah. So for me, I'm not the kind of person that, like, I'm not political where I'm just going to always be on my side. But it's the kind of thing where in this situation, if that was me and I was the Walt supporter, I mean, you have to take onus of this. Otherwise, I mean, how are we even a serious country at this point? Or this is the last point I want to say, is that I'm telling you, we got free energy and we've got teleportation technology. there's no fucking chance I'm ever letting anybody that would let this all this fraud happen or do this fraud or turn a blind eye to it ever have that technology. Those are the last people on the world that should have this technology. People that I can't trust to just not steal from my pockets. I'm not giving you free energy. You're never getting that.
Well, as far as the Hegelian, what's that term that he likes to use? There was even a movie about it, the Zeitgeist. As far as the Hegelian spirit of the times, of anybody with any modicum of political power, while there are obviously worse things than others, I'm pretty comfortable with the idea that there are always going to be various kinds of mafioso-style dynasties that, change over time. You would have families that were involved in, the bootleg liquor industry back during Prohibition, and then they became respectable figures. You would have the Medici family, who were a bunch of gangsters, but they were responsible for ushering in the Renaissance. So, yeah, exactly. So in this sense, I don't really hold anybody up as saying, well, this particular person is going to be saintly and perfect. It's like, no, unfortunately, we're living in the reality where we're going to have a lot of imperfect people. And one of the big problems that happens with that is that on certain issues, that let's say if I believe that this issue is very wrong, yet all these people are supporting this issue out of loyalty, out of the fact that, how does that go? For my friends, everything, for my enemies, the law. Unfortunately, we're living in that kind of world to a certain extent. We're not going to have people that are going to be completely objective when it comes to, meritocracy, bringing in always the right people. Usually it's going to be the people that are our friends, people that are loyal to us. I mean, look at Vladimir Putin. Like, you say what you want about him, he's a great friend to have. All the people that have been friends with Vladimir Putin since they were, playing judo with him back in the day, they became very successful. So knowing that, we still have certain things to choose when it comes to, well, are we going to outright accept this very obvious breaking of the social contract when it comes to the Somalian fraud that's going on in Minnesota? Are we going to accept the open borders? Like, no, these are obvious things that regardless of what may be going on behind the scenes, because, okay, yeah, let's say that everybody's all in on it. As far as, they're all aware of the free energy and there is this game that's being played. But as far as certain human things that we can do right now, things that we can support, things that are like very, very obvious, what I think is going on with certain, let's say, podcasters and pundits, they want to create this atmosphere of, well, we don't know anything. And because we don't know anything, we are forced to be completely silent when you see obviously bad things that are going on that can actually be addressed on a political level. And that's very much like, I'm originally from Russia. I was born in St. Petersburg, Russia. That's very much something that I see as being a classic Soviet strategy of creating this environment of, well, anything is possible. They could be right. They could be right. So we're just not going to bother. We're not going to bother doing anything. And that, I think, is like a very, very dangerous environment. So, yeah.
No, I agree that you see that, that appeal to ignorance. We don't know. You see that in UFOs. You see that in physics as well. And this is where I just break through that. And this is where I think this is probably why my message resonates better than some of the people that you can tell is kind of an orchestrated message. Because I'm here and I'm not here to sell a narrative. I'm not here to tell you which side's right or wrong. In fact, I'm not even really sure what the sides are, if I'm being honest with you. If we bring it back from the fraud and the gangsters and the mafias, let's assume now that I'm right, that there is this secret physics, this science, this technology. That's definitely a mafia controlling that. Call it what you want to call it. They call it the breakaway civilization. It's probably a culmination of people in the CIA, defense contractors, but they did the same thing that you're saying. They basically told they had inside information and they gave that inside information to somebody, and then they started a business and then they became billionaires and now they become legit, right? I think about that all the time in the context of the Somali fraud, in the context of this technology. I would say that the vast majority of people that are rich, elite, they're probably fraudsters. And so I look at this and I go, okay, well, what are the sides in this UFO disclosure when I watch it? And it's all a damn joke. I say one side wants nothing to come out. They're the ones that hold all the cards, that have everything to lose. They don't want any of this to come out. They've got control over people's minds. They can tell people to wear a mask. It's going to protect you from a virus, even though it's not how viruses work or any of that. But it doesn't matter because they have control over your mind. And then the other side says, well, maybe we can tell them about the aliens. We're not going to tell them about the free energy technologies or any of the stuff that would actually matter in their lives. But we can tell them about the aliens, though. That'll get them, wake them up. They'll kumbaya. That's the sides. Those are my options. I get to choose a bunch of people who want to control my life and tell me what I got to do and when I can go outside and every single aspect of my life and how much I'm going to pay for energy and then have my whole life plotted out for me. That's my options. Or I can choose the people that also want that exact same thing, but also want to tell me there's aliens.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just going scorched earth. People should literally be afraid of me on any and all sides because this is all some bullshit. And I just want the truth, and I just want the free energy, and I want the warp drive so I can get the hell away from all these other people. Okay.
Well, this is something that we were talking with Jason Giorgiani about, where the challenge that's posed by Nietzsche's Last Man is real, where whatever future we're heading into, it cannot be one where we're going to have all of these people that are going to, once certain technologies actually end up coming out that would benefit humanity, end up abusing them to such an extent that they would destroy the entire earth. We can't have that either. So the question is, okay, what kind of world do we want to live in? And Jason is very big, as am I, on people who are, let's say, more cosmopolitan minded, people who have more of a sense of imagination and at the same time, having a sense of compassion and ethics. And the idea is, okay, can we find these people and can we have those people thrive and not have the people thrive who would, press a button and destroy everything just because they're bored? That's the real question here, because that would be probably the same question if we assume that there is this upper breakaway civilization class out there. That's the kind of question that they would be asking. They're looking around, they're saying, well, we gave these people the internet. We gave these people the ability to have any kind of piece of information available to them at any time. We probably created LibGen for them. I don't know where LibGen comes from, but I say we created all these ways of getting free books. If you want to do that, Anna's Archive, whatever. There is so much ability, even if you don't have any money, there is so much ability to gain whatever knowledge you want, especially with AI right now. We brought AI in. What's your excuse? You can take long podcasts and you could break them down into all of the necessary pieces of information. You can compare those podcasts, with all these great books that have been written, just put everything into that AI thing and then, churn things out and then create a guide, to go from there. So there's all kinds of ways of advancing, yet what are most people doing? They're in their goon cave. They're in their doom scrolling TikTok. So when people see that, it's like, well, they would say, well, what do you want from us? What do you want from us, Ashton?
So yeah, let me. This is actually why I want to talk to you. And I was literally thinking about this question last night. I was thinking, what kind of society do I want to live in when we have free energy? What kind of government structure do I want to have? Because you think about this and you realize like everything, the way we do stuff now is not going to work. It's too corrupt. It can't work at all. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do a thought experiment. Just right off the top of my head, without even thinking about it too much, like what would be the perfect scenario, an ideal scenario for your government? And I would say if I picked several thought leaders that were in a council who I could trust every single one of them to make the best, what they thought to be the best decision. That would be the best I could think of. And there's still going to be situations where cumulatively they could make a wrong decision. But if I picked people with diverse backgrounds that are all super intelligent, then in general, I think we could, if they were uncorruptible, then in theory. Now, is that a practicality? Probably not. But that kind of speaks to what you said, which is collecting the right people and allowing them to thrive. And I like what you said better because it doesn't rely on an individual. It relies on a structure, an incentive structure that you build for anyone to rise up into the role. And I like that better because if I were to be picked, I don't want to be assassinated. And that's the first thing they're going to do. They're going to be like, oh, you're the thought leader. Okay, boom, you're done. Bye. We done. I mean, that's the first thing the corrupt people are going to do, right? Is take out one of those people who's incorruptible. So this is the big issue we're going to have. I don't want to have a totalitarian society where we live under some kind of fascist regime. I want to ideally live in a society where we can still have freedoms. So the question is, how in the hell do we do this? Because I don't see a way that this world can survive if we don't figure that out before we reveal all this.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to get to Didier onto this as well. This has not that much to do with physics, but it does have to do with the future, which I know you also care about. So what are your thoughts?
For me, the idea of taking the best for government worries me, because that's a government by the elite. And if you read Robert Michael's elite theory, I think the book's called Political Party, you kind of see what happens when the elite kind of they start taking over, and people start to dislocate themselves from their own responsibility in society, and it creates a government that's very dangerous. I mean, I when I was 19, I became a Buddhist monk, because I was an anarchist who was worried about government in general, the state as a generality, and I kind of changed my mind throughout the years. Yeah, that's a long time. It's about 20 years ago. I attempted to be a Buddhist monk and failed miserably. And, but what I did learn is that there's a lot about perception, how the future is evolving, and I think that when you look, for example, at chimpanzees, and when resources start dwindling down, chimpanzees become very, very violent and dangerous. And I think that if human beings have this sense that resources are winning down, opportunities are being cut up, we need to stop everything because of climate. We need to stop data centers because water, whatever. All this stuff, I think leads to very violent societies that devolve, and I think that we have to protect Western society, because without Western society, this world ain't gonna survive. So I don't have a how to say that, a system I can propose, but there's definitely challenges in the future, and I think, to bounce on Giorgiani a little bit, the sort of Promethean ideals that the Greeks generated. I think he would argue it's also the Persians. I'll give some props to the Persians for Jason. But
I was going to jump in here because I was going to say, and that whole thing about being anti-AI data center, first of all, I agree with you. Like, I'm not trying to say, hey, here, I've got the genius solution to this. I was just going, that was my best guess off the top of my head. And I'm not, there's a lot of problems right away with it, right? And you nailed it. It's like, first thing's going to happen is you're going to have a corrupt class that's going to form, right? Like, that's just it.
Yeah.
The other part of it that I'm already seeing this is this anti-AI data center sentiment starting to form, like this anti-science, anti-technology sentiment. Yes, it's starting kind of weird, where people are like against making data centers now and against technology advancing. And this is also the kind of thing I'm afraid of. Is this groupthink that will form that is like anti-advancement, like anti. So there's a lot of reasons I'm against it. And this is a really good point, is that Skunkworks, people should read the history of Skunkworks. Why was Skunkworks even built? Why did they even do Skunkworks? They already had Lockheed Martin. Why did they need Skunkworks? This actually is a similar problem. They wanted to make something that they didn't have all the bureaucracy, that they could come in and they could say, hey, we need a plane and we need it in 3 months. And we need to get the engineers in with the builders and the designers all in the same room, all working together. And we need to have everything laid out. And we're going to build this structure in place where we can just knock this out. And we're going to rip through all the bureaucracy and get it done. And it became wildly successful. But it's only wildly successful if you have all the right people that are the trusted people in all the right positions making all the right moves. If they're messing up, if they're incompetent, if they're corrupt, the whole thing will fall apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Ben Rich and the other guys that started, they knew that. They knew that too. And that's why Ben Rich even talks about wondering what the Skunkworks' future is going to be like, because it all depends on the leadership and the people that are controlling it. And this is why I think it really is a breakaway civilization, where they look at it, where they're like the gatekeepers of this information. and they're passing that information down. But just like you said, what happens in those situations? They get corrupt. So imagine all the good we could do in theory, just like we've got free energy, fusion technology. Even if we didn't give it to people, if we had a group of people that were like, we are going to be the trusted people that give you what you deserve, and we just believe them, they could give all the poor people of the world enough water and food where it doesn't matter. They'll never starve. We could give them all the resources, literature to learn anything they ever want, right? We're just not going to give them the ability to blow us all up. We could do stuff like that. We could do things that are really good. But is that stuff going to kind of happen? No, probably not. But this is where you look at it and you say, okay, well, we need to think about how is this going to look like? Because I don't really want to live in a society where people in Ethiopia are cooking fish with their iPhone because their iPhone's a free energy device, and it's like the only power they have is an iPhone 7, like literally my iPhone 17 10 years from now, that somebody's put a free energy device into, and now some kid in Ethiopia is using it to cook his fish.
Yeah.
Like, if that's the kind of world, messed up ass world we're gonna live in, I don't know, guys.
Well, look, when you say cooking fish, I think that's being too charitable. If that's free energy, it'll probably have the ability to zap somebody to death. You know, it could be reconfigured.
Like, that's not what it's going to be. It's going to be a boring dystopia. Like, we're going to get the nerfed version of all this shit, and like no one's going to know how it works. So they're not going to have the ability to like turn this into a teleportation device. It's going to be like District 9, where it's like they're just like, you know, people that have crazy super advanced technology, they don't even know how it works or what to do with it. Right. That's going to be the weird situation we're going to find ourselves in. And then in America, we're going to have like fucking Jetson stuff going on here. Right. Like, we're talking about just completely living in two different tiers of reality at that point, kind of like the people that are on Sentinel Island. So that's what I'm actually concerned about. I think they realized all this and why they didn't tell the truth and made this breakaway civilization, where it's like kind of, and not trying to hate on you here, Dirac, but kind of like what you had with the mental block earlier, where it's like, I can't even perceive this, right? Like, they realize most people can't even perceive it. So how you get brought in or in the know is like, you first have to have the inkling of interest. If you're somebody that's not even interested, they're never even going to approach you, and they're going to leave you in the dark blind, like Elon Musk, in my opinion. But if you are the person that sees through, that wonders, wait, why can't we explain gravity? Why can't we explain these things? Or some people I just think have some kind of mind where like they just get it right away, and they understand that like spin is somehow connected. I don't know how these people do it, but they do. They see those people and they bring them in. That's why you'll see people who are engineers. They're like not PhD physicists, but they're like, they don't have formal education, and they're doing that because the engineers know they figured it out, and they can identify them because they know. It's like, you know, seeing somebody who's like in the fraternity or whatever, you can just tell when they talk. Like, as somebody tells to me about 0-point energy ether, I'll be able to tell that fast if they get it or not.
And by the way, I just want to say, like, for some of the comments about Dirac, like, oh, his mind's closed, like, for me, I think that's complete bullshit. Because if something new is being introduced to a person, you know, it takes some time for them to analyze it and think about it. It would be, I think, awfully presumptuous to think that with this new piece of information, well, now instantly somebody would be able to say exactly the correct reply. Because I think a lot of this stuff requires more than one session of being able to go through everything, learn everything, and then go back with, you know, with a response. Because maybe there are certain things, Didier, that you're not sure about. I mean, look, I have no idea what's going on at all when it comes to a lot of this physics stuff. But as far as yourself, what would be certain things that, let's say, maybe you already have certain questions right now that come up? Or if you don't have questions at this moment, what are certain things you would want to take a deeper look at as far as what Ashton was talking about in order to then come back and address those things?
I mean, for me, first and foremost, I think that if I'm not, you know, looking at the chat, but if some people have some criticism about me,
that's I think it's like one of those friend-enemy distinction things where they think, well, this person how dare he ask Ashton, some questions? Like, people are still in that tribal mentality where just because somebody happens to, disagree or, even just like ask some kind of questions, I think, okay, here it comes. Now there's going to be, Ashton is going to be conquering this guy, teaching him a lesson. It's like, our man does it again. It's a very tribal thing, which, people get interested in that. But life is a lot more complicated than that. Sometimes, sometimes even if there is disagreement, there is a lot more of an interest in getting to an objective truth over here, which I think all three of us are trying to do in our way.
Exactly. Yeah, well, let me set Dirac up here. I'll set you up for this, Dirac, which is that I don't try to tell people you have to believe me. That's not what science is all about anyway, right? Like science should be about presenting the ideas and letting people come to their own conclusions. And the reason why I'm more adamant is because I've done 400 something live streams, 100 interviews, thousands of hours researching, reading books, learning the science and physics to the best of my ability. And I'm basically just trying to skip to the end for the people, right? As opposed to try to go through all of that. It would take forever. But you guys can watch it. It's all out there. The abridged version that I would tell people, and I don't agree that Dirac's being closed-minded at all. In fact, I thought this has been a great conversation. He asked me smart questions about the stuff, and I was happy I was even able to answer. I was worried because I'm just a normal guy, honestly. But if people want to learn, the shortcut is honestly just reading this book here, Faster Than Light by David Froning. Okay. David Froning, who's an engineer, talks about 0-point energy. In fact, some of your questions I think are in the appendix in some of these papers, like modeling. Actually, this one right here. Modeling the 0-point energy fields, for example, preliminary simulations for vehicle interactions and fluid dynamics in the 0-point energy field. Some of these are amazing. Like this is literally the best book I've ever read related to the physics. But it's one of those books where like I can't give this to my dad. He doesn't understand the physics. Like if you understand the physics or even the basics of physics, electromagnetism, then you read this and it's like opening a whole new door you didn't even realize was there. And the part that I think a lot of people can't get past is they're like, well, who is this guy? Why is he writing this book about faster than light? Is this a science fiction writer? Like, why should I trust him? It says he's an aerospace expert. What does that mean? And if you Google him, there's nothing about it. You can't even find when he died. You literally can't even find when he died or his birthday on the internet. And the answer is because he's a fucking spook that worked in the government for like 50 years building psycho teleportation shit or whatever the hell. And he definitely made those orbs. The whole chapter 4 is about air breathing, fusion, propulsion. And I'm going, shit, there it is. So the last thing I'll tell you is this is the most mind blowing. This is just me kind of flexing a little bit. Is number one, those plasma orbs are aneutronic fusion using proton boron 11. And I know they're using that, even though in theory, if you have gravity manipulation and you can reduce the Coulomb barrier, you can theoretically just do hydrogen, deuterium fusion directly. You don't even need proton boron 11 in theory, but they are proton boron 11 because these huge X-rays, which are Bremsstrahlung radiation coming out, or Bremsstrahlung radiation. I always pronounced the name wrong. Anyway, this huge X-rays coming out of it. The reaction of hydrogen deuterium fusion is not strong enough, doesn't release enough energy. So that literally has to be proton boron 11. They need the boron 11 in that fusion reaction so that it releases enough energy so that they can actually do what they need to do. And they're not releasing enough radiation. So that must be an aneutronic reaction. So number one, I can already tell what those orbs are. The other part of it is there's the rule that's the craziest shit about this teleportation to me is that it's unlabored acceleration, which means the plane and the whole system has to be moving at a constant velocity. That is just such a weird detail that I would have never expected or even thought about. And there's a whole chapter about why it has to be that way. Right? And because like that basically allows for a low energy jump, but it has, if you're accelerating, it doesn't work. And that's why you see those orbs do that. And that's why I know this is the guy that, I don't know if he literally built those exact orbs, but he definitely worked on the science for the government. So that's the Bible right there. If you want to get into it, dip your toes in it.
Yeah, sure. So, so for me, I'll definitely check it out because I read all the time. My Twitter feed is basically just me recommending books. So I'll definitely check it out. Because I mean, yes, my epistemology is very conservative. I don't use belief. I don't use justification of belief. It's not part of how I prove things. And for me, it's very like I'm not a debunker. I don't care about debunking people. Eric Weinstein to talk about, he prefers pre-bunking. It's more important, trying to make a steel man out of someone's possession. And for me, what the best I can do is actually taking your idea, Ashton, seriously, and if I can't just model it in my mind right away, I need to play with the ideas. I need to see, okay, where things are working. Are there are little problems, so on and so forth. It's an attitude that I got from my days as a quote unquote as a hacker. You want to understand the system first so that you can exploit it later. And if there's no exploits, then your system is complete and very nice. And so, but the most important thing that I'll say, and lots of people that follow me would not really like what you're saying, Ashton, because I think a lot of people presume that you have this idea that not you personally, but as you said, there's a kind of movement, an anti-intellectual movement that's trying to anti-science, anti-mathematics. As soon as something is intellectual complex, we're gonna say it's bullshit and so on and so forth. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy that you said that that's really important. That that how can I say this, that science and mathematics, it must continue. It must persevere, because as we said, these like anti AI data center stuff, that's geopolitics. That's the Chinese Communist Party in the background trying to push up downward. They're trying to destroy what we have in the West, all these great intellectual achievements. And I think we need to protect them. And I think a lot of people in science, when they hear somebody outside of science talk, they're afraid of that. They're afraid of just anti-institutionalism, just for the sake of destroying the institution, just because you know what I mean. And I think that's a conversation that's we talk a lot about how the problems with the institution, problem of knowledge, but you go to IAS, you go to Harvard, so on and so forth. They publish great material. Still, is great research being done, real research by people who really care. And I think it's important not to alienate the people are actually working, that like really putting the intellectual time and making sacrifices. A lot of people making sacrifices, intellectually and so on and so forth. And they're trying to push knowledge forwards, to grow the tree of knowledge, which is basically what keeps us alive. Knowledge. I think Popper said knowledge is like honey to bees. We need knowledge to survive. If we don't have knowledge, the end. And so I'm very glad that you said that like being anti-science, anti-scientist, so on and so forth. It's very important to fight that. And I think that's something that I'll point forward to my friends, maybe my academic friends who might not like people from the outside, but and feel like there's a danger there. There's a real danger of losing what we have, the advantage we have,
Yeah, I think it's gonna be hard for a lot of people out there, and I'm glad that you have a different following than or demographic following than potentially my following is, because I want more people to be exposed to these ideas in general, and I want people to realize that I'm not out here grifting people. I mean, I think it's got to be, I don't know how people could even paint that label on me. Grifters basically will lie for attention, money, clout, engagement, whatever, but I dare people to try to find the lie, whether or not you agree with me or not. I mean, to say that I'm lying about it, or I mean, who grifts off of science and physics? That's pretty tough to do. I mean, it's hard, not enough money in real physics, let alone in grifting off of physics, in my opinion. So I hope people realize, at least I'm coming from a normal perspective. The reality of the situation, whether or not people want to believe it, is it is exactly what it looks like. I mean, it's almost like a movie. I'm actually curious to see who will play me in the movie if this ends up being true here about all this stuff, because it's like you got people talking to me. I got Navy engineers talking to me that like Salvatore Pais, the guy with those UFO patents, like, I'm pretty sure this is like, he's like this guy's spiritual successor. Like, he's saying the same things in slightly different words, and he knew this guy. And he also is shady about his past too. And I'm just sitting here going like, I don't know exactly what's all going on, but people are talking about it and they're getting it out there. And then the question is, like, in the chat, somebody was asking to super chat, do you see them giving this to us? Do you see them revealing this or getting this through academia?
And we're going to do all the super chats, by the way. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware. I do see the super chats, and we're going to go through them. But yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure, but I wanted to address this one because it's relevant anyway, which is, do you see academia revealing this to us? And I think the answer is they're kind of waiting for the situation to be ready. But are we ever going to be ready? That's the part where, personally, I don't think so. But if they do reveal it, this is why I was presenting you guys the scenario of, like, what if we just give people this baseline stuff, but we don't give them the other stuff? That's what I think we would try to do. I don't know how you would do that because you're going to have black markets and things form right away. But that's the idea.
Yeah. And it's this super chat over here from Little Gothics for $5. You see the science behind this tech being introduced to academia, with its potential to be weaponized being possible without mass AI surveillance. So that's the idea right there.
Man, I don't know if you guys know much about the surveillance stuff. Like the Gorgon stare, which is one of those two videos, is wide area motion imagery, which means technically it actually is computer generated, because they take a bunch of photos and then they make a huge interactable view, and then you can click on it. You can open, I think even back in like 2014, it was like 60 or 100 windows. Can you imagine a big screen and you're just popping windows open, and then you're watching movies on each one, and it's DVR, and you can record backwards or whatever? And you say, okay, that's crazy, Ashton. Like, they could do all that. And I'm saying they could do that in 2014. And I'm going, now take AI and throw AI on the top of that. And now AI is monitoring literally every single moving thing on the screen. Everything as the size of a city. And they put them on drones. So they just send one drone up, and then they just have another drone up while that drone comes down. And you've got persistent 24/7 coverage all the time. And you look at that, you go, and then here, I'll even make it crazier, because my real job is actually databases and doing stuff like this, which is why this shit scares the shit out of me, which is now what you can do is you can start setting up alerts. Like the same way where your phone is like, it knows where you live because of like how many times you were there or whatever. The AI can be smart enough to like alert General Ashton when like Lev has deviated from his normal path. Like Lev just took a 1% deviation today. And then I get a text message, Lev did a 1% deviation. Should we strike? It's like, oh, what are my plans? And then you just like, you can literally interact with the AI. I'll be like, well, I'll set up an attack strategy here and a plan for us to take him out when he goes to the laundromat. It's like, oh, can you imagine? But they already have this. They probably already had this like 10 years ago. So think about the power of that. This is why the CIA was talking to that guy about the Gorgon stare, being like, we have to reveal this because like we know that at some point we have to account for what we've done. Like, right? We have to face what we've done.
This is very, very heavy stuff. Now, speaking by the yes,
I'm going to say this. Maybe I should, but I had a very early investment in Palantir.
Well, there you go. I bet you're doing pretty well now. But yeah, no, my brother did too. My brother was bragging. I was like, "How'd you know?"
Yeah, and I'm like, to be very honest, 5 or 6 years ago, I'll say it. I was thinking for solutions, because in Nigeria, I have many friends in Nigeria, and there's Christian massacres and Igbo targeting, and also like young girls getting targeted, so on and so forth. And we actually tried to start a Palantir in Africa to help that out, but it didn't work because the military is so corrupt we couldn't even do it. But anyway, so maybe I was on the wrong side on that. But I mean, to go with Palantir, though, the evolution of the Palantir CEO is very interesting. He's going in philosophical direction. Maybe I wouldn't have invested at the time if I knew. I think he said that people should should have like mandated military conscriptions or something. It's like, okay, yeah. I just want to add that. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Sorry, I was just seeing I just saw another clip, and I didn't even see the full context, but apparently it's being reported, or it was in the podcast with Eric Weinstein, that he said that the government reached out to him and Sam Harris and Lex Friedman to help spread the message to get the people prepared because people trust them or some crap like that. And oh my God, I want to crash out so hard right now over this. Like, I am about to announce that I'm just anti-disclosure. I'm teetering on the edge. The guy that's been trying to push for all this, like, now I'm almost be like, you know what? If these people want it, now I don't want it anymore. Now I don't want anyone to have it anymore. Like, I don't trust any of this crap. They're all like being told exactly what they can and can't say. And I don't want to listen to anybody who's got one hand behind their back trying to tell me, here's what I should be listening. Just show me. Stop telling me. Right? Mm-hmm. Especially when I know they're all full of shit. So, you know, it's about to get 100 times worse. And the people that are mad at me for being mean to people, I'm sorry, but boy, I'm about to get a lot worse probably.
Well, okay, here's the thing with Lex Friedman. And for those who have watched BTR, speaking of which, don't forget to smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, go to breaktherules.tv. That's how you get to the YouTube channel. If you're watching on Ashton's Twitter or YouTube, go to breaktherules.tv, go there, subscribe. There is so much great content there with Jason Giorgiani in particular. So many streams and videos and shorts. It'll be an incredibly enlightening experience if you have not watched Dr. Giorgiani's work before. But anyway, when it comes to Lex Friedman, and I've talked about this ad nauseum, but for those who are just tuning in who don't know, this particular thing about Mr. Friedman that I personally found out, and this is public knowledge. This is from Ben Avery. If you guys don't know Ben Avery, he's a great guy. He was formerly the producer of Tim Dillon's podcast back in the day. So Ben Avery was at dinner with Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan and Tim Dillon, and he heard that Lex Friedman, was talking with Joe Rogan, nonstop compliments about Vladimir Putin. This is not what he presents to the public. This is something that, he wants to keep closer to the vest as far as, from what I'm understanding, allegedly bringing people like Joe Rogan closer to certain Russian propagandistic ideas step by step, which is why I don't remember the specific thing. I think it had something to do with the Ukrainian military, but something that Joe Rogan mentioned on his own podcast. He mentioned that, I saw this on Russian TV. Why would Joe Rogan watch Russian propaganda TV if not for maybe certain relationships that he's developed with people like Lex Friedman?
Yeah, I mean, Lex Friedman is the prototypical elite, right? Prototypical Nepo baby. Probably never lived a normal day in his entire life, if I had to guess. You don't end up being that weird by living a normal life. But I don't necessarily give a shit if he's a Russian spy or anything like that personally. The thing that weirds me out about him is that this guy gets an interview with the CEO of Helium Fusion, David Kirtley. And this is the stuff where, like, I'm watching interviews of people that are like my dream interview. Like the person that I would, the number one on my list of who I'd want to talk to. And I'm watching Lex Friedman randomly interview him out of the blue. How does that even happen? How does Lex Friedman even get wind of interviewing this guy? I presume the way it happens is he's at parties, billionaire parties of these people hang out at, and they meet the dude, and somebody tells you, like, you need to talk to this guy. You need to learn about this guy, right? Like, this is going to be the next thing. And I imagine that's how it plays out. And in this case, it's extremely, extremely relevant because the field reverse configuration they do produces a plasmoid, self-organizing plasma, the same plasmoid that Ken Shoulders was working on with his charge clusters. It's not exactly the same what they're doing, but they have the ability to tap into what he was doing by pushing their system far from equilibrium. So the plasma wants to stay all neutral, right? If you're able to push it far from equilibrium, then you might be able to produce this high beta regime like you're seeing in those plasma orbs that can do that Casimir effect boundary condition thing. So what am I saying? I'm saying that helium fusion and tri-alpha energy, the people doing these field reverse configurations, they're like one step away from unlocking free energy. And to think that they don't know about that possibility, they fucking know about that possibility. And they're most likely are about to give us Timu nerfed fusion, where they don't do the non-equilibrium specific configuration that you need to do. And I've even had hints where David Kirkley has kind of hinted at the said to go running in a non-equilibrium mode theoretically and things like that. And I'm pretty sure he knows. So this is what makes me so suspicious of this, is that these are the elite people. They're specifically being told they're going to be the messengers and harbingers for us of this information. And they're 100% controlled themselves. Like, whether or not it's really a direct control, it's more of like an indirect control, like you said, like bringing the right people together, telling them, like all the people I mentioned, they all have me blocked. Lex Friedman has me blocked because I basically, during that interview, I replied on his post about that interview being like, you don't believe that these videos literally showing this are real and you're interviewing this guy, and he blocks me. Well, fair enough. I was kind of rude. And same with Eric Weinstein. I say something and I push back on him about he's literally the problem. And now he's doing a 180. He blocked me over calling out him for being the problem. And now he's doing a 180 several weeks later. So I'm just saying the reason why they're blocking me is because I'm the counter narrative, pushing back saying these guys are telling you half the story. The full story is a lot darker than this, and it's going to be a lot more shocking than this.
Yeah, I don't know. Didier, since I don't know how close you are with Mr. Weinstein, would you have anything to say as far as maybe how he operates or where his mind is at, and if there could be possibly some kind of a resolution here down the line with himself and Ashton? And you're muted right now, so you gotta unmute.
Yeah. Okay. So Eric and me. We spoke a few times over voice on Discord. He follows me. And I love Eric. Actually, Eric made me come back to mathematics. I went to finance like a sellout. But I went into finance, and I kind of rediscovered my passion for, mathematics and physics through just Talk. And so Eric seems to me like a very actually honest guy who is actually truthful and has gone through a lot of problems in academia. And also a lot of my friends don't like him, who are in theoretical physics, who take these things very seriously. Don't like him because he has a critique of the institution. He has a critique of, string theory and Ed Witt and so on and so forth. So he's at odds with a lot of people. Is there a resolution? I don't know. I don't know the nature of the the issue between him and Ashton. But what I do know is that Eric is, I think, a really honest person, and I would be very surprised if he was hiding anything. Personally,
yeah, he's not. Let me jump in on this, because here's the situation, man. Like, I don't consider him to be a gatekeeper in the sense that the CIA is a gatekeeper, right? Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like he's in with that. He's actually the anti-academic, which is what I think is so crazy about this. This is why I don't really align myself with him. It's the same in the UFO community. You have the believers and you have the skeptics, and they all hate each other, but it turns out they're all wrong. And then in the academic community, I've got the academics who are the full-on, classic physics believers. And you have the rebels, the Sabine Hassenfelders, and you got the Eric Weinstein. They're all wrong. That's the problem again. This is what no one really wants to accept, and this is what's funny is that like that one con artist guy, Dave Farina or whatever he is, he hates all of them and he hates me, and they all made videos about all of us, right? But the reality is I'm not against them because they don't have the right viewpoint. What I'm against them is because they're the ones that should have figured this shit out. Those are the people, literally, specifically Eric, specifically Sabine, specifically the ones that went against academia and said academia is too rigid. They're the ones that should have been like, oh, wow, here's 0 point energy. But instead, Sabine, all her videos about Sunny White and all the 0 point energy says it's always 10 out of 10 on the bullshit meter, right? Eric Weinstein, when he has Terrence Howard there, who admittedly is just a celebrity. He's not a physicist. He's doing his best to explain, similar concepts, I think. He doesn't do a great job, but he's shitting on him the whole time, right? He's not open-minded. This is why I push back. This is where they should have been.
Oh, I'll disagree with you on this because I think for me, Eric was very nice with Howard because from the get-go, Eric tries to give him his due with his invention. I don't remember exactly what he does with this polytopes and so on and so forth. But then Howard goes on to say that zero was not like a number that should be used, and I think Eric kind of demonstrated in many ways that, hey man, if you don't have the zero, you like what about your additive identity? You don't have that, so on and so forth. There's all kinds of really, and the problem is that addition. I'll tell this. There's this mathematician that many people don't know about. His name is Shai Ahan, and Shai Ahan is from Israel, and he works at Technion, and he's got this great book called The Mystery of the Real Prime, and basically it's a book that basically showcases the problem with real numbers, showcase what happens with p-adic numbers and quantum theory and so on and so forth, and it touches physics, touches a lot of things, and he discovers later on that addition doesn't work in the world of p-adic numbers, so on and so forth, and this kind of stuff is actually thought about, but guys like Howard's are not actually doing the work, and I think Eric gave him a shot to explain himself. I would actually disagree with that on.
Well, okay, let me say this, and I'm not here to defend Terrence Howard on that. It's more of the attitude that I had an issue with, and he was definitely wrong on that. But here's the alternative perspective on the zero thing, for example, just to give you the same idea in using a different example. If I take this rubber band, right, and if I pull equally on both sides, let's call this 1 unit of pull on either side. The rubber band's perfectly stable. It's not going left. It's not going to the right, right? Mm-hmm. If I pull twice as hard, same thing. In fact, if I were to mathematically add this up, you would say the total force is 0 in the middle, I guess, right? Because it's equal on both sides. So this is 0 and this is 0. If I pull this even more, it's still 0. Yeah. If I pull this even more, at some point, this rubber band is going to snap.
Yeah.
So even though I've made zeros in all of these situations, there's something different between those zeros. But the difference in this situation is going to be the stress. Now, if I'm using electromagnetic waves and space-time is my medium, then this stress is potentially gravity, based on that 0-point energy model that I was showing you before. So now what I'm saying is that if I'm able to maybe twist and manipulate electromagnetic fields, it might be possible that I can twist those fields in such a way where I get a gravitational response out of them. In fact, that's what David Froning argues you can do with what he calls SU2 conditioned fields. He's basically saying if you twist a laser beam.
So when you just as because I'm being a pedantic mathematician now, so when you say SU2 is the symmetric group.
Yeah, I mean, the way I understand it is that he's basically adding an extra dimension, and therefore now saying that if we look at the symmetry of the laser beam and we split it and we change it and polarize it and bring it together, we're going to get different effects. Now, I'm not a math guy, so I can't explain the math that's in these pages here, but I would have you take a look at that and you tell me what you think.
This
how it converts.
Just as another, I don't know if you know Kaluza-Klein theory. Do you know?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
right. So that's also five dimensional, if I believe.
Yeah. So it would basically be a Kaluza-Klein 5-dimensional theory. Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's got this nice Lie group, so on and so forth. Would you know, like, so Kaluza-Klein kind of failed, and it actually makes a really great prediction. Kaluza-Klein, it's actually stunning. What would you say? Would be would you know the difference between Kaluza-Klein, why it fails, and why this model will work? Would you know why? No.
All the depth that I have is the Kaluza-Klein fifth dimensional model, unify electromagnetism and gravity, and use torque to combine it. If you look at Ferris Williams, he's got the actual conversion rate between electromagnetism and gravity, which it should be obvious. If you look at the form of electromagnetism and gravity, the electric force and gravitational force, it's a constant times the G1, G2, or force 1, force 2 divided by R squared, right? So if you look at that, you go, well, wait, why are the forms like identical? Why are all the constants and all of the variables all in the same location? Well, and then the reason then people come back and say, well, electromagnetism is so much more powerful than gravity, though, so they can't be connected, right? It's just way more powerful, like many orders of magnitude. But this is the funniest part. What did I say about, what did Ferris Williams say about charge? Ferris Williams says that charge is related to spin. So what if there is a connection? What if, like, for example, if I take a magnet, I wish I had the magnets. I need Dr. U here. But if I take a bunch of magnets, like bar magnets, and I stack them all together long ways like this, it creates a very powerful magnet. But if I then fold it in half, it actually weakens the magnet significantly.
Right.
So what is it? If I kept folding in half, folding and folding in half, I've gone from now a very powerful magnet to now a very weak magnet. So my answer to gravity versus electromagnetism would be the Earth is just a weak magnet. That's gravity. It's weak magnetism, right? And why? Well, because everything's relatively neutral. If you were to align the fields perfectly, you would get a very powerful magnet. But generally, with a planet, you have a very weak magnet because the fields aren't perfectly aligned in the way that would produce a very powerful magnet. And that's also the difference between why an unmagnetized piece of metal versus a magnetized piece of metal. Why is there a difference? If it's inherent to the structure, there shouldn't be a difference, but it's not. It depends on the alignment of the spins of the atoms and the electrons.
Now, Ashton, I want to make sure that you wrote that you don't really have that much time right now. Would you have just a few minutes to quickly go through these super chats that came in right now? Like, how are you doing right now, time-wise?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. And once again, everybody, don't forget to subscribe. And also, I really hope that we're going to be able to maybe make some kind of a connection with Mr. Weinstein, Dr. Weinstein. Weinstein,
what else
yeah.
can I do, though? I mean, if we can make a connection, of course, I'll be totally cordial with people. I mean, I always have been. I don't know why everybody's got this perception. Like, one thing I want to say, too, is that, and somebody made a good point. They said, if you pretend to be nice to them, they'll come around. Yeah, of course they will. I just hate that shit. You guys really want that? Like, if I had just been, like, super nice to people, imagine just a hypothetical scenario where some guy comes down, super nice to everyone. Now he's telling you got super secret alien technologies and all this crazy shit. People start worshiping you. I don't want that psycho shit. I'd rather people hate me and reveal this information. I don't want people like me, you know? And this is the kind of information, too, where, like, this is mind-blowing stuff. This isn't the kind of stuff where you're like, I'm going to handhold you through this. This is the kind of stuff where, like, damn, okay, we got to just lay this down, rip this Band-Aid off. We're going to break a lot of people's minds here. So, you know, I'll absolutely be nice and have great, cordial conversations, but people got to realize that, like, some of what I do on the internet is for a specific purpose to, like, shock people into this and ensure that people don't form cults around it, because I am actually concerned about that being a thing.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, they specifically call out, they're concerned about cults forming around all this psycho shit too. People are gonna start worshiping, you know, doomsday and psycho stuff.
Yeah, no, we definitely don't want that. And that's why, once again, with Break the Rules, I think that this is a place, unlike many other places, where these kind of connections, I think, can be made. I mean, one quick example would be, I was able to bring Curtis Yarvin together with my friend Vladislav Davidson, who is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. So that just goes to show you how you have completely different worlds that are able to merge together here, thanks to the magic of BTR. And that's why you guys have to smash the subscribe button right now on breaktherules.tv. Put a like in there, click the bell, and also patreon.com/breaktherules. Here is the link. I'm putting the link in the chat right now for everybody. Go there right now, become a patron. And if you become a $20 patron, you are going to get to participate in the audience, in the physical audience space in the apartment in New York City for the live New York City events, which, by the way, Ashton, if you're ever going to be traveling, I would definitely love to have you physically in New York City for us to do a show. and then we're going to go to the after party or on the rooftop. If the weather's nice, I got a really sweet rooftop. Ask anybody who's been there. Ask Dr. Giorgiani. It's a great rooftop. Anyway, with that being said, let us go into super chats over here. So we have Chaotic Good 42. Love it. Glad I caught this. Then we have G Willis 9337 for $5. If NGT gets to meet aliens, I'm going to be upset. Who is NGT? What is he talking about here? Oh, you're muted right now, Ashton.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh, right. Yeah, that would be pretty funny.
NGT. Yeah, I used to love him.
Ken Griffin owns a copy of the Constitution. Okay. These are going to be really fast. I remember when you had to bootlegs Zeitgeist. Volunteers attribute Chaotic Good. Okay, we already did the academia one. So 3 more. We're going really fast. Ashton should call the marketing department at Helion. Okay, over here we got Amy, Faster Than Light, available from the publisher, $21. That's my channel.
Book, guys, I think they're like sold out on Amazon. So adventuresunlimitedpress.com. Check it out. Highly recommended, guys. They're not paying me anything. I actually haven't even contacted them. I just promote it because it's just literally the best book I've ever read. So, yeah.
And last one over here, Rainman Zeta Zeros are a mandatory ontological condition of UHT, EPR plus UON. Our reality is 6D, 4 large, 2 compacted spatial dims. What's going on here? I'm very confused.
That's you, buddy. That's you.
The Riemann Zeta Zeros are mandatory ontological condition for, oh, Jesus.
Okay, Jesus can't help you, even though he's behind you.
He has a theory that he's combining Einstein, Podolsky, Rosen, and Dr. Yu's Yuan theory, with his own, I forget which UHT stands for off the top of my head, temporal crap. But basically setting up, he's saying 6-dimensional.
It's 4 large
spatial dims. I guess I don't understand what the last part means.
Is it 4 manifolds that are compacted in 2 spatial dimensions? I mean, there's an interesting aspect, though, as I said, because I talked about the mystery of the real prime. That book, it's basically about the Riemann zeta function and the Riemann zeros. So they might be involved actually at the quantum mechanics. There's some aspect of it's very interesting, chaos theory, so on and so forth. But thanks.
Let me tell you one other fun story about this, though, is that some of my followers are like objectively way smarter than me at some of this stuff, which is crazy. Like, these people have been following me that are like engineers and physicists, right? And like they've got theories, like, you know, multiple people I think have figured this out and have theories that are, I wouldn't say maybe exactly right, but good enough, right? Like, it's like clues of Klein. It's like it's there, but maybe there's gaps and things like that. Just absolute geniuses. I couldn't be more proud of this community. It's scary how smart people are. And I just get a little worried because like the CIA's got orb technology. So I kind of hope you guys are like in America, because if you're like in Iran somewhere, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't think you're safe. I don't think you're safe for learning about this.
Speaking of warp technology, I just want to share real quick to end this whole thing. This is a game for the Sega Saturn I used to play called Astal, and there is this wizard, this dark wizard named Geist, who is sending these orbs. He's able to control these orbs and make him do all kinds of stuff. So this is one of the things that I thought of when we're talking about these orbs, how the Japanese people, for whatever reason, they're very shamanistic in how they think about this stuff, where they're able to like, look at what these 2 orbs are doing over here. And they end up constructing some kind of a geometrical 3D shape as well. So, yeah, I don't know exactly. Yeah, here, this thing. I don't know if that speaks to you, Ashton, as far as what exactly is going on with these orbs. So, wait, so you think that the Japanese developers may be onto something here when it comes to how they're displaying these orbs being used by this little wizard guy over here?
It's just, I think, a coincidence, because I think people see these things in nature, and they also see things like, you know, amplification used as an array. And so when you see 3 things like that, like that's actually why they need 3. Is like one can't pull this off. You need this amplification effect to occur, and that requires a coupling of more than one of these orbs. So I think this is why you see a lot of these themes in games, movies, etc. What I'm really interested in is that Disclosure Day movie that's coming. to see what Steven Spielberg might have thrown in there that either people were talking to him about, especially now that we're seeing everybody doing 180s suddenly in the last couple of weeks. I wouldn't surprise if we see 3 orbs teleport a plane in the Steven Spielberg movie. I'm going to be crashing out like crazy on social media. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, this like, one, dude, these are stealing my thing. I might just be like, I made the videos. This guy is proprietary. Just to make like, I don't know how much money I could sue him for. I'll just be like, he stole my idea. They'll be like, but you said the videos were real. I'll be like, but I want to make millions from Steven Spielberg.
and this one over here, by the way, on the screen, this is the penultimate boss fight from Castlevania Symphony of the Night against this priest named Shaft over here. And see, he's also got these orbs that he's controlling, and he's even, inside of an orb. So anyway, just bringing that up about.
Do you have queued up?
just these 2 right now. Just these are the ones that I thought of. Beautiful games, by the way. If you guys ever want like a game just for the visual impact, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, you cannot go wrong with that game. So I want to thank Ashton Forbes and Gaudin Didier. Please follow people, by the way, at is it Dirac's Ghost, or what is your at? Because all these people are watching right now, you man. We gotta get you pumped up here.
I mean, if you guys want to follow a nerd, it's a Dirac Ghost at Dirac Ghost. If you want to learn some deep mathematics, some deep physics, and Ashton,
hell yeah,
you can follow me if you want.
Follow Dirac, guys. Check out Lev. Make sure you guys are following the podcast here. This has been an awesome conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Ashton, thank you so much. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, smash that like button, click the bell, and guys, I will see you next stream, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.